Hello, I'm Emily Thomas with the BBC News. The coalition government, led by the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, has plunged into chaos as protests against plans to overhaul the judiciary continue. Mr Netanyahu's far-right National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir has urged the government to press ahead with the proposed changes. Our reporter in Jerusalem, Anna Foster, says Mr Netanyahu is trying to stop the crisis escalating even further.
On the one hand, he has protesters who've been on the streets regularly for 12 weeks now and who came out last night at the news of Yoav Gallant, the defence minister's sacking. And they said that they would continue their protests until this legislation was not paused, but ended altogether. And then, of course, on the other hand, you have Mr Netanyahu's coalition partners, some of the most far-right elements of Israeli politics, who he's had to band together in a coalition with in order to form a government. They want this legislation to go ahead. He needs their support and he needs their backing. So how does he chart a course through all of that?
Strike action by Israel's main trade union against the government's planned judicial reforms has led to departures from Tel Aviv's main airport being cancelled until further notice. Two major seaports have also stopped work. Israeli media are reporting that the Medical Association and the Federation of Local Authorities are joining the general strike. Most of Germany's public transport network has been paralysed in a strike over pay by two of the country's largest trade unions. The unions want pay rises of more than 10% to help their members cope with the rising cost of food and energy. Jenny Hill is in Berlin.
It's really rare for a dispute over pay to escalate to this level of drama. It's being called the mega strike here. Two powerful unions combining their firepower to get their workers out on strike and attempt to bring the country to a standstill. And it looks as though to a degree they are being successful. It's very difficult to get around Germany today. Planes, trains, ferries, all cancelled. Depending on where you are in the country, bus and tram services out too.
Political parties in Australia have agreed a deal that's key to reducing the country's carbon emissions by nearly half before the end of the decade. Michael Bristow reports.
Previously, Australia was slow to embrace policies to tackle climate change, but a series of natural disasters has led to a shift in attitudes. The most eye-catching detail in this new deal concerns more than 200 of Australia's most polluting oil, gas and mining facilities. They'll have to cut their emissions by 5% a year until 2030. The accord was agreed by the governing Labour Party and the Greens, who had been holding out for tougher legislation. The Green Party said some new fossil fuel projects would now be unviable.
BBC News. The lower house of the Indian Parliament was forced to adjourn minutes into its session because of furious protests by opposition MPs. They were angry at the disqualification of the Congress party leader Rahul Gandhi after a court found him guilty of criminal defamation for comparing the Prime Minister Narendra Modi to people he described as thieves. The Chinese billionaire Jack Ma has made a public appearance in China after being out of the spotlight following a row with the government. Mr Ma visited a school he helped set up in Hangzhou. Chinese leaders have recently tried to persuade private firms that they'll create a favourable environment for entrepreneurs. Mr Ma's return could be linked to that campaign. The pro-independent Scottish National Party will announce today who will succeed Nicola Sturgeon as its new leader and First Minister in the Scottish Parliament. The three candidates to replace her are Humza Yousaf, Kate Forbes and Ash Regan. Our Scotland correspondent James Shaw says the SNP's choice of leader could trigger the breakup of the governing coalition.
The Scottish National Party rule with the Scottish Greens. That's what provides their majority in the Scottish Parliament. And the Scottish Greens have said they want someone who shares their progressive values. And they clearly feel that Kate Forbes, partly because of her strongly held religious views, and also Ash Regan, who is strongly against gender recognition reform, they feel that they would not be able to work with either of those as a First Minister. So if one of them was elected, then you have a big question.
Prince Harry, the youngest son of the British monarch, is in court in London for a preliminary hearing in a privacy case against a newspaper publisher. The Prince and a number of celebrities accused the publisher of the Daily Mail newspaper of numerous breaches, including phone tapping. The Mail has strongly denied the allegations. That's the latest world news from the BBC.